And you're looking live at the Capitol, where tomorrow night, President Trump will give his first State of the Union address of his second term. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier. President Trump is expected to lay out his vision for the year ahead, addressing the economy, national security, border policy, and efforts to achieve peace abroad.
We'll see lawmakers, cabinet members, members of the military, invited guests, all on their way to Washington, D.C., as anticipation continues to build for what could be a defining moment in the president's second term.
And tonight we'll break down what the president will address and what it all means for you.
We start tonight with our panel, Democratic strategist Mali Smith, who previously served as a staffer in the Biden administration and on the Harris campaign, as well as Republican strategist Janiyah Thomas, who served as Black media director for President Trump's 2024 campaign.
And we also have Democratic strategist Jason Palmer, a former Democratic presidential candidate, and Taylor Hawthorne, a visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum.
President Trump earlier today in the East Room making a speech. We have some sound from the president. Here's what he had to say about the speech tomorrow.
We have a country that's now doing well. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We have the most activity we've ever had. I'm making a speech tomorrow night, and you'll be hearing me say that. I mean, it's going to be a long speech because we have so much to talk about.
It's great to have this wonderful panel here with us tonight. Janiyah, I'd like to start with you. The president setting up tomorrow night's speech. What are some of the top issues that you're expecting him to address to the nation?
I think, first of all, he's going to talk about all the accomplishments he's made. I think he's going to start with the border, national security issues, the international issues as well. But I think he's going to address what everyone else also wants to talk about, is the economy issues as well.
And Jason, we saw the president in the East Room earlier today with the angel moms. The border has been secured for the most part, but is this still a major issue that you think will resonate with the American people?
Well, it depends if he talks about the border or if he talks about immigration, because Americans have said 70% that they're not in favor of this immigration policy with what just happened in Minnesota, what's going on around the country. So it depends on if he frames it as a border thing, where actually the border has become more secure, or if he tries to talk about immigration, it could get a little bit rowdy in the room.
And Mali, of course, affordability is always a big issue heading into the elections. Trump has unveiled, the Trump savings accounts and all these other things, talking about the Dow reaching 50,000 points. How do you see the president talking to the people tomorrow who maybe are looking at grocery prices still pretty high?
Yeah, I mean, he has to balance the fact that he needs to talk about what he perceives are his accomplishments, but he also needs to meet Americans where they are. I worked in the Biden administration. There was a lot of economic data we pointed to, like jobs growth and GDP numbers, that we said, hey, look, this shows the economy is working, but the American people didn't feel it, and we lost. So I would suggest to the Trump administration, you need to thread that needle. What we heard him say in his remarks framing his speech was the economy is great. Everything about the economy is great. Well, we know from polling, Americans think the economy is worse under Trump than they did under Biden. They also are incredibly unhappy with affordability. So he's going to need to thread that needle, which is tough because presidents want to talk about their accomplishments. They don't want to talk about what more they have to do. So I think the president needs to adjust his framing, or this is going to be a speech that's not going to land well.
And Taylor, a lot of, the focus this year has been on foreign policy. Of course, we saw Venezuela, Iran right now is in the headlines. China, of course, always a pressing matter. Part of that we saw with the tariffs especially playing out. A lot of manufacturing did come back to the U.S. Imports from China have dropped. How do you see the president navigating that? Because there are a lot of people saying the president should be focused on domestic issues.
I think the president and this administration need to do a really good job of communicating to the American people why foreign policy issues matter. I think it's easy for us to understand with American exceptionalism that nothing bad ever happens to us and nothing bad's going to happen here, but that's not true. And so I think this administration and the president during his speech needs to do a really good job of communicating to the average American who lives in Kansas or who lives in California or Idaho why these issues matter to them and that they're keeping the nation secure for them, for the sanctity of our values, for our democratic laws, for everything that we value about this nation. That's really important, but this is a messaging issue for the admin that they need to hit home run on tomorrow.
And Jason, we're usually sitting here talking about who might be at the speech. Will it be angel moms? We saw last year the little boy with the cancer survivor there. But this year there's sort of a different theme, which is who's not going to be there. You heard Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying he will be, but he's not going to say anything if people decide not to. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries asking members of his caucus to use silent defiance or alternative programming in another area of the Capitol. Are we entering a new era of politics with this?
We'll see. I think that's actually being decided right now by various people in the Congress, whether or not they're going to show up, as well as from the Supreme Court. I mean, there was a big decision that just came down over the weekend. Trump lost that tariff decision. He's very upset about it. And he's immediately kind of continuing with the tariffs through a different avenue. And it's not clear at this very moment who will be in the room. I do think he would be smart to invite some of the U.S. Olympians who just won and who are kind of America's heroes. That would be a smart thing to do. But I don't think he should only pitch to his base. The American people want a president for all Americans, and he just doesn't seem to get that. But if he gets it tomorrow, he could change it a little bit.
Actually, speaking of the Olympians, if I could jump in here, President Trump actually did invite the men and women's hockey teams. Actually, we have a clip of FBI Director Kash Patel on the phone with the president while celebrating with the team. So actually, let's play a part of that clip now.
Unbelievable, and you were all unbelievable, and that team is pretty good you played. I don't know if we'll ever get anytime soon, right? And you know, I tell you what, I just told my people 2 minutes ago, I didn't know they'd be calling. I said, we're giving the State of the Union speech on Tuesday night. I could send a military plane or something, but if you would like to, it's the coolest night, it's the biggest.
We're in. Yeah, we're
So the men's team has indicated they do want to attend. The women's team has declined. Taylor, I want to go to you actually because there's been some tensions, especially with our neighbors to the north, Canada, whether that's, letting Chinese EVs into the market, even though you had the U.S. and Mexico and Canada having this joint effort against that for a long time. There's all those different plays, cultural differences, if you will, as well. How do you see the Olympics playing into the speech tomorrow night?
You know, I always think it's really funny that Canada, we look at them as like our little brother that we enjoy bullying a little bit, and Canadians look at us as like this big evil thing. And I always think that dynamic is really funny. But I love Canada, and I think a lot of Canadians really love us too. I mean, I certainly love maple syrup. So I think that the dynamics of the Olympics, like we're going to see that on play tomorrow. I think that you're going to see a really rowdy crew from the Olympic hockey team. I think that they were so proud to be American. You saw that in all of their speeches. I think that is a feeling that all of us should feel, left, right, or center, especially surrounding the Olympics. You should be proud of your country. Canadians should be proud of their country. You know, they might have had the better hockey team, but in the end, we won. So.
And Mali, on that note, we did see this year, actually, for the Winter Olympics, the U.S. set a record for medals compared to ourselves in the past. So there has been quite a lot of focus on celebrating America. Do you see maybe that being one of the uniting factors tomorrow night?
I think if he can lean into the U.S. winning a lot of gold in the Olympics, that's certainly something that Americans can agree on. I wouldn't necessarily go the full Kash Patel and drink beer and party in a locker room on the taxpayer dime. He said he had meetings there. It's a great coincidence that those meetings happened to be when we were having the Olympics. So I think he more wanted to drink with the Olympians than actually have any FBI-related meetings. But on your question on if that can bring Americans together, I certainly think it can.
Janai, does the FBI director get a free pass for celebrating America and a sport that he actually plays and enjoys?
Yes, I mean, I think it's definitely it makes a lot of sense to have American representation there. And I think all the FBI director was doing was representing the country and celebrating with the team. And I don't see why people have such an issue with that.
Mally, what do you say to that?
I think we should all celebrate America's success. I'm just saying it's quite a coincidence that those meetings happened to be while we were having the Olympics. I mean, it seems like it worked out great for Kash Patel, but I think the reason he was over there was to party on the taxpayer dime, and he also has a history of flying around to see his girlfriend perform. So it's just part and parcel of what he does as FBI director.
Well, some might argue that part of the FBI's role is messaging and information operations, so going there to argue on behalf of his country could be part of the job, but to each his own. Right now, we are going to go to the White House, where NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu. President Trump, ahead of the State of the Union, Mari, with the members of angel families at the White House. What can you tell us about today?
That's right, Steve. Today in the East Room, President Trump welcomed and was honoring the angel families and the family of Laken Riley in particular and other victims of crimes by illegal immigrants. And he signed a proclamation designating February 22nd yesterday Angel Family Day. That's the 2-year anniversary of the murder of a 22-year-old nursing student, Laken Riley, by an illegal immigrant when she was out running on her college campus in Georgia. Let's take a look at what the president had to say.
Everyone in this room not only suffered an infinite loss, they were the victims of politicians who put the comfort of foreign criminals before the safety of American citizens and American patriots.
Upon his return to the White House last year, the first bill President Trump signed into law was the Laken Riley Act, which requires that the Department of Homeland Security detain undocumented immigrants arrested for theft-related crimes. Angel families or relatives of those killed by undocumented immigrants or members of international criminal organizations are thanking the president for his tough-on-crime policies, including Laken Riley's mother.
You have said from the beginning, literally the day after this happened, that you would not forget about Laken. You weren't president at that time, and you have not forgotten.
Without you, America and the world would not know the consequences of open borders. Thank you for restoring law and order. Thank you for acknowledging us, the angel families.
He never, ever looked away from my pain. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, I will never forget the story of your sweet son, and I will never give up fighting for the American family.
President Trump ran on securing the border and fixing the border crisis that he says took place under the previous administration. The Department of Homeland Security reporting that in his first year back in office, nearly 3 million illegal immigrants have left the U.S.
In 125 years, the murders, the lowest rate. You know why? Because I closed the borders, and we got a lot of people out. It's not just closing, we got a lot of people out.
And President Trump is expected to highlight the secure border and immigration enforcement during his State of the Union address tomorrow night, although many other topics are also on the table, including his peacemaking efforts, notably his economic agenda and his national security strategy. And Steve, today President Trump said to expect a long speech because he has a lot to talk about. Back to you.
NTD's Mari Otsu live at the White House. We'll be checking back in with you throughout the program. Thank you, Mari. In the meantime, we're going to have to pause our discussion here with the panel. When we come back, Representative Bob Onder will join us from Capitol Hill to share what he's anticipating for the president's address and what it means for legislative priorities in the months ahead. Coming up in just moments away. Stay with us.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. I will not wait on events while dangers gather. I will not stand by as peril draws closer and closer. The United States of America will not permit the world's most dangerous regimes to threaten us with the world's most destructive weapons.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
It's so uplifting.
I feel better about the world.
It was encouraging, gave me hope.
It was absolutely amazingly divine.
I thought I was going to heaven.
You have to come see it.
Multiple times.
It's worth every penny.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Shenyun.com.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hard-working neighbors are facing a hunger crisis. Many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community, and demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double an impact.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers.
Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free adult education centers near you.
And there's a live look at the White House in Washington, D.C., where the president is preparing for his first State of the Union address tomorrow night.
And welcome back to our special live coverage. President Trump tomorrow returns to Capitol Hill, delivering his second address since reclaiming the White House. The address comes at a pivotal moment for the country and could help set the tone heading into the midterm elections. NTD's Jack Bradley has more on what to expect at the State of the Union address as political tensions simmer inside the chamber.
I think the president will go over his year-long accomplishments. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, tax relief for seniors, creating the Trump investment accounts, 100% expensing for new factories.
President Trump is addressing both chambers of Congress, his second address of his second term since retaking the White House last January. Now, he's expected to hone in on the economy, especially as the Dow Jones Industrial Average hit 50,000 points, gas prices and inflation both at 5-year lows compared to the previous administration at a 40-year high.
And when you look at the murder rate in the United States, last year dropped to the lowest level since 1900.
This comes as the Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration's use of tariffs under an emergency law. Now, the Trump administration is still going to pursue other legal avenues to keep those tariffs in place.
In the wake of this case, we can use other authorities that are frankly, very sound and very strong.
Immigration will also be front and center, with Border Patrol citing border crossings that are illegal at near zero under this administration, as well as a partial government shutdown that's ongoing as Congress fails to fund the Department of Homeland Security over issues regarding ICE operations. And then there's politics inside the chamber. Many Democrats plan to attend an alternative event called the People's State of the Union in Washington, D.C.
I don't plan on attending, no. I'm not going to sit there and listen to Donald Trump lie and try and say the economy is doing well when everyone I know in San Diego can barely get by.
But House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says,
my current plan is to attend. We're not going to Donald Trump's house. He's coming to our house. It's my view that you don't let anyone ever run you off of your block.
Last year, tensions boiled over when Congressman Al Green was ejected from the address after interrupting the president during his speech. Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman is urging his colleagues to keep it civil.
I don't care who the president is. Don't yell and disrupt that
It's like you really should respect the office.
Now, this address is considered a national special security event. Nearly everyone in the presidential line of succession will be there. A designated survivor will be taken to a secure location during the speech. Last year, it was Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins. President Trump has also invited the U.S. men's and women's Olympic hockey teams, who both won gold this year, and the men's the first time in nearly half a century, to be his personal guests at the State of the Union. The men's team quickly agreeing, the women's rejecting it, but a lot more to look forward to at the State of the Union. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And as early voting has started in some states for the primaries for the midterms, President Trump battling the historical statistics of past midterms. So how does that ultimately play into the message and the momentum of tonight's speech? Back to our in-studio panel here. Mali, I'll start with you. So given the consistent post-war pattern of midterm losses for the president's party, what combination of economic indicators or external events would you say are required for Republicans to achieve an outlier result in 2026?
Well, if the election were held right now, Republicans would lose the House, and it would be, I wouldn't say they'd lose the Senate, but it would be incredibly close. If the president's approval rating is at about 50%, you usually see the House then lose seats, right? But the president's approval rating is at about 40%. Some polls recently had it about 39, 38%, clearly in danger, in a danger zone. And you have the added fact that on the top issue, affordability, Trump is polling terribly. He's about 20, 25 points underwater on that. He got a reprieve when it came to his tariffs with the Supreme Court ruling. The tariffs have cost Americans about $1,200 this year. But instead of taking that reprieve, he has decided that he is going to add the tariffs on with a different authority. So I think if Republicans really wanted to have an outlier and try to change this, they need to fix the voters' view of the economy. And my one suggestion would be take the win that you were given by the Supreme Court and drop your insistence on tariffs.
Taylor, on the issue of affordability, this is definitely going to be a major issue. What do the Republicans need to do in order to message properly about affordability, and how do you see them changing sort of the traditional cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I've said from the beginning that I actually don't think that this is a data or a numbers issue. I think that this is a messaging issue. The administration needs to come out and do a way better job of talking about that gas prices are at a historic 5-year low. You know, they need to talk about how that it is, I mean, even in DC, you know, rent prices are falling, grocery prices are down. So a lot of these things that affect Americans every single day, they might not be noticing it at the grocery store. They might not be noticing it directly at the gas pump, but it's happening. And so the administration needs to do a better job of communicating those things. If they can do that and they can show affordability, then they're going to get closer to a win. I think the only way that you actually get a win on this is if people can start buying homes. People like us should be able to buy homes in this country. And if you can't, I don't care if it's a Trump issue, if it's a Biden issue, if it's a George Bush issue. It is an issue that needs to be resolved for all Americans across the country, because that is something that we should be able to do.
The issue of the economy, obviously a major issue that we're going to talk about a lot this evening. We're going to come back to the discussion. In the meantime, right now, we're going to go up to Capitol Hill, where joining us is Congressman Bob Onder, Missouri Congressman. We'll see if we can bring him up with us. Congressman, if you're here with us, thanks so much for joining us. What are you anticipating from the president's address tomorrow night?
Great to be with you. Well, I think, first of all, the president will be celebrating the many successes that we had in 2025. Certainly passing the Working Families Tax Cut Act, a $2,700 tax cut for every American family, preventing a $4 trillion tax increase that the Democrats had in store for our country, cutting tax on tip, tax on overtime, tax on Social Security, securing the border, making energy affordable again by drilling for American energy rather than regulating the industry to death. But I think we'll also hear from the president that there is more work to be done. Certainly more work does not need to be done on affordability. I'm a medical doctor. We need to do more to make health care affordable by giving people choices, not the one-size fits-all failed Obamacare policies. We need to continue to work on deregulation because the average American family pays $12,000 a year in regulatory costs. And of course, we need to secure our elections by passing the Save America Act.
Congressman, we were just having a discussion right before we went to you in our panel here about affordability, the issue of affordability. On top of that, what is the top legislative priority in the weeks ahead, and how confident are you that Congress will ultimately be able to deliver on this?
Well, again, I think we need to deliver on the Save America Act. We cannot have illegal aliens registered to vote in our elections. We need election security by requiring a photo ID. Again, I think we need to continue our pro-growth, pro-jobs, deregulatory agenda. But yeah, I think there's a lot more work to be done. But yes, I think even though we have a very narrow majority in the U.S. House, we did it before when we passed the Working Families Tax Cut Act, and I think we'll do it again.
So under President Trump, 4,000 convicted criminal illegal immigrants have been deported from the country, with millions more leaving voluntarily. Congressman, you're a member of the Subcommittee on Immigration Integrity, Security, and Enforcement. Why do you think the president's strategy has been so effective in contrast to previous administrations?
Well, yeah, I think it's been effective for two reasons. Number one is previous administrations did not have the will to really try to secure our border. I've said for many years that we don't need new laws, we need to enforce the laws we already have on the books. But the other thing that the president has had in the last year has been a Congress that would work with him and provide the resources through the Working Families Tax Cut law. We provided the resources for Customs and Border Patrol, for ICE, for immigration judges, for detention beds, and of course for the long-promised big, beautiful border wall. And all those things together have resulted in about a 95% decrease in illegal immigration, and just as importantly, it's resulted in deportation of criminal illegal aliens who have made us all less safe. It's resulted in a 21% decrease in drug overdose deaths, something we've been working on for many years to know without success. But by securing the border, keeping out Mexican fentanyl, Venezuelan cocaine from our streets, we have saved many, many American lives.
Congressman, there's another topic that probably hasn't been getting as much attention just because the news cycle moves so quickly nowadays. Medical professionals have begun to recognize the harm caused by gender transition procedures on minors. You've recently introduced what's called the Chloe Cole Act, which would ultimately ban these procedures. As a physician yourself, do you think the president's policies this past year have helped make this and other measures of protecting children possible? And how big is it that the AMA, the American Medical Association, is now backing off from these transgender procedures?
Well, yes, the administration has done a lot over the past year. For one thing, the administration's Department of Justice helped me write the Chloe Cole Act, which will hold those accountable for harming children for the damage that they do to children. The administration has made it clear that if you are a hospital that's going to do transgender procedures on children, that you are going to lose all participation in Medicare and Medicaid. The administration has provided the evidence base through the NIH to show that the data just does not support transgender mutilating procedures on children. And yes, it is an enormous deal that the American Medical Association, as well as the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, have both come out making statements that these gender-altering procedures are not appropriate for children. So I think the tide is turning, and I think we will see a day shortly where we look back at these procedures the way we look at bloodletting and leeches and frontal lobotomies as just a sad chapter in the history of American medicine.
And lastly, before we let you go, we know you're busy up there. The president has ultimately presided over a decline in international enrollment at American universities. His administration also revoking student visas for people deemed national security risks. Congressman, do you think this increases opportunities for American college students and ultimately protects our national interests?
Well, I really do. I really do. There have been a number of problems with some of the visas being granted. For one thing, it's been well documented that there is espionage by some international students, especially those from communist China, on our university campuses. We have seen those who are anti-American, anti-Semitic from Middle Eastern countries. So I think the administration has appropriately been much more careful about how we issue student visas. And I really do think that flooding our universities with too many foreign students also destroys opportunities for American students, because many times these students are paying full or even an even higher tuition rate, and that squeezes out American students who deserve a place in those universities.
Missouri Congressman Bob Onder, greatly appreciate you joining us. Coming up, the breakdown and the numbers behind the president's message. Pollster Dustin Olston joins us live to discuss which of President Trump's policies are polling the strongest and whether this speech could shift momentum heading into key Senate races and primaries. There's a live look at the White House in Washington. Stay tuned after the break.
The era of big government is over. Our goal must be to enable all our people to make the most of their own lives with stronger families, more educational opportunity, economic security, safer streets, a cleaner environment, and a safer world.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, MyPillow mattresses and MyPillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard MyPillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you will also get this free beneficiary planner.
Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
And welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meier. This is our special live coverage of the preview of President Trump's State of the Union address. Joining us now is Dustin Olson, pollster at American Pulse Research and Polling and host of the Political Trade Secrets podcast. Dustin, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. Now, the State of the Union is usually a showcase of the president's successes. Which of his policies have the most approval in the polls?
Well, that's a great question. And it's interesting, the Harvard-Harris poll, the Harvard Center for American Politics poll, they track this on a monthly basis for whichever president's in office, and they usually have between 15 and 18 policies. And it's not surprising that actually most of the president's policies actually enjoy a better than 50% support. And right now, the highest is the lowering prescription drug prices, which has about 83% support, which is pretty high. Still, despite the tragedies in Minnesota, we still see deporting criminal illegal aliens, people who've committed a crime since they've been here as well. That's also still very popular. So for the most part, his policies overall are popular, even with a dip in his overall approval.
And expanding on that, which topics do you expect to be Trump's frontrunners in the State of the Union address?
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to hear about some of those winners. And one of the things that's interesting when you look at the polling, nothing happens in a vacuum. And while the American people still haven't quite felt all the impacts of, right now, this is projected to be one of the best tax refund seasons in the country's history, and we see the inflation rate decreasing and take-home pay increasing. Public opinion is generally a lagging indicator on those sorts of numbers. However, still Republicans are trusted more on the economy than Democrats, and I do think that's why, even though Democrats are doing fairly well in what we call the generic ballot, they're not performing as well as they were in 2018 at this point. And I do think it's because people still do understand that Joe Biden was president when most of this inflation happened, and the jury's still out a little bit on who actually could be better to deal with affordability.
And on that note, midterms, of course, are coming up. There are several key states to watch for Senate races, and early voting has begun for the primaries in North Carolina and Texas, where Democrats are outnumbering Republicans at an accelerating pace. How will the State of the Union speech move the needle in terms of these primary elections?
Well, it's interesting. You actually can see this in the polling over the last couple of months. The news, as you probably know, has been careening around on different topics, and it's not been really, the president hasn't been able to really focus it. This is an opportunity to reset the issues, to talk about, to your question a little bit ago. I expect him to talk about the economy and to make his case on it. I expect him to talk about Trump RX. I expect him to talk about what he's been able to do on the border and how that has made a difference. I expect him to tout Trump accounts, some of these things that are big successes, and get people focused back on that and get back on a winning message. That's what I think he's going to try to do. And, from what the Democrats are going to try to do, I think Hakeem Jeffries is ultimately going to try to avoid any unforced errors from the Democrats. I think he might have a hard time doing that. But ultimately, from the Democrats' perspective, history is behind them to do well in the midterms, and they don't want to cause any issues that could trip them up as they go down the field.
And a big focus of the State of the Union address is who or who isn't in the rotunda there. So we do know that some Democrats are planning to go to a counter event. Will the absence of some Democrats from the speech overshadow Trump's wins in the minds of voters?
You know, it might just mean that it'll be a little bit more of a civil affair, honestly, depending on who actually does show up. And I think the American people will welcome that. One of the worst moments in State of the Union history, I think, is that moment when Nancy Pelosi tears up President Trump's speech at the end of the State of the Union. That kind of display is troubling to Americans. They don't like to see those sorts of things unless you're in the most partisan camps. So I think that actually probably does do some good. But having a bracketing event, having something else is, smart communications. But ultimately, I think it's a good way to get some of the rabble rousers out of the House chambers and not have them become a detractor and cause Democrats issues. It's something that's worth noting. Last week, Hakeem Jeffries was on a left-wing podcast, and they tried to get him close to the defund ICE position. I don't know what his actual position is, but it's very clear that, at least in the polling, defund ICE and that's very close to defund the police, and Democrats do not want to get tarred with that going into the midterm elections.
Well, definitely a lot to watch for tomorrow for sure. Dustin Olson, thank you so much for joining us, though.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And some rising political stars on both sides of the aisle are often highlighted in the State of the Union address and in the response as well. Joining us back in studio to discuss some of those key political figures to watch in tomorrow's night's speech are our panelists, Democratic strategist Mali Smith, Republican strategist Janiyah Thomas, and we're also joined by Democratic strategist Jason Palmer and Republican strategist Taylor Hathorn, visiting fellow with Independent Women. Great to have everybody back in studio. So, Janiyah, I'll start with you. Both sides are guilty of being a little bit misbehaved, if you will. We just heard about Nancy Pelosi. We've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, last year Al Green, Congressman. What do you expect to see this time around? Is there going to be decorum in the Capitol, or could there be some outbursts?
I would say I hope so on the left side compared to how they acted last year. I would expect them to do better this year and show some type of decorum and some type of respect. And I think not showing up to the State of the Union is kind of disrespectful to the office of the presidency. But Democrats are going to do what they want to do. But I think it's important for all of us on both sides of the aisle to respect each other and show some level of decorum.
Jason, there's always grandstanders and people that want to get that few moments of fame or attention. Do you think it's going to serve the Democrats well heading into the midterms if we see anything like that tomorrow?
I think if they're individual grandstanders, that won't be good. But I don't know how many of your viewers have watched Prime Minister's Questions in the UK, where they get very rowdy about certain things. I actually think America is headed in that direction. I'm a bipartisan kind of guy. I think that's what our country needs to move forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump says something that's way off the reservation with regards to immigration or Minnesota or something that Democrats consider vile, that we hear boos, and a lot of boos, because Democratic voters want their constituents to stand up, or their representatives to stand up, and they feel like Democrats have not stood up enough. So I would not be surprised to see a real group effort to do something tomorrow.
And Taylor, when it comes to, who we're watching, there's of course the midterms coming up. Who are you watching for in terms of members of the party who are maybe gaining more influence within either side? We have the changing of the guard, if you will. Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell no longer in office now, or kind of passing the baton along. Who's maybe the new stars to watch for as we head to new elections?
Yeah, I most, this half of the table at least, are millennials. And so I think that we all want to see a slightly younger generation of politician come up. There are people in their 30s and their early 40s who have been doing the work, who have shown that we are ready to represent our nation and that we are proud of this country, left, right, or center. And I think more people need to get out there and get involved in politics. I think you look at the approval ratings of Congress and nobody wants to run. I can't tell you how many of my friends who are involved in politics and say, I want to support it, I want to be involved with it, but I'm not going to let that be me. And we've got to change the tide on that because good people, despite what side of the aisle, need to be getting involved in the local election and local politics. I think as far as who you're going to see talked about a lot, Anna Paulina Luna is a really rising star on the right. I think on the left, you're looking, AOC did a terrible job in Munich, but I think that there is an opportunity for her to come out and save face on that and to really course correct and focus on domestic issues, which is what she is good at, which is what she is rallying her base as. And, not that I want to give the left a whole bunch of talking points and what I would do, but if I was them, I would still focus on AOC as a rising star in their party. She, while she is not working class herself, she went to a very prestigious private university, but she did work as a bartender. She's got the messaging. She knows how to rally the base. And so if they can kind of get her to fix her messaging around not knowing that much about foreign policy, I think she's probably got a pretty good future in their party.
And Jason?
Well, I was going to say, as someone who my organization together endorsed 18 young people who are running for Congress last time, half of them Republicans and half of them Democrats, I'm a huge fan of everything you just said. And I do think the American people want more 20-somethings, 30-somethings leading our government, people who understand AI, people who understand technology. People are not going to get stuck in the ideological debates of the 1980s. Half the time when I hear both Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump talking about issues that were popular or issues that were big in the 80s and 90s, I think that's not where we're at today. We actually need somebody who speaks to people where they are now.
But I think that that's our job to make sure that we're identifying those people like your organization does, because there's a lot of people our age who are younger who will run for Congress. That's not necessarily the people who you want to run for Congress. If people are looking to become an influencer and a TikTok star, that's not really someone who cares about foreign policy, who cares about domestic policy, who will really entrench themselves in these issues, that will really understand the Constitution and the importance of it. It's not a talking point. It's not something that you do for fun. This is something that is incredibly important to our nation, and if you don't have young people step up, our country is not going to look like it does today in 30 years.
Agreed.
And Mali, we saw in New York, of course, the new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, was very often on social media. Many people say maybe that played into that. He was also a young mayor, though, one of the options, at least a candidate. So many people are saying perhaps we'll see more young mayors, maybe not the same policies, but how are you reading that? Maybe the new generation that we could hope to see?
Yeah, well, first off, I got to say, the one thing Democrats shouldn't do is they shouldn't bring those ridiculous paddles they had last time where they were protesting during a speech. That's the one thing they shouldn't do. On the question of Mamdani, you see the split of you have a lot of Democrats on the progressive left who are really exciting the base. They are great communicators. They are able to talk in a digitally native manner, and they're able to attract eyeballs. But that isn't necessarily the same people you want to highlight to win a national election. That's why we have Governor Spanberger as giving the State of the Union response, not Mayor Mamdani. So it's a difficult balance because you both need to excite the base, and some of the folks who excite the base are not necessarily the people who are going to appeal to the middle, while some folks who appeal to the middle might not be as exciting. But I think also generally what you're saying too is how do you have a political message that is able to break through in this fractured media environment where no one is getting their news from the same place. You need to be able to have viral moments that you can clip out. And I would say this is for Trump too. Not everyone's going to watch this 2-hour speech that he wants to give, but does he have a few minutes that people can clip and share and go viral?
And Janai, I think we've seen a bit of the changes there. You had the Trump administration on the White House. I think the Biden administration was also on there briefly on TikTok. Of course, now it's under American ownership, if you will. How do you see maybe that element playing in? It looks like this administration especially has been full steam ahead on memes. Maybe not everyone is watching those, but it seems they're trying to reach the younger generation. How do you see maybe that playing out?
I think a lot of the staffers are around my age, and they're people I work with on the campaign. So they get the generation of, watching memes. They get the trendy sounds. Like, they understand what to do on social media. So I think that the Trump administration is doing a better job than other administrations in the past have done because of the younger environment of people working in the administration that have a lot of higher, powerful positions in order to like implement these TikTok strategies and whatnot.
And Taylor, to Mally's point about Governor Spanberg, newly elected governor in Virginia, being the chosen person for the Democratic response, why do you think the Democrats chose her, and do you think it's an effective choice?
Well, she's got that America's darling thing going on. You know, her dad was in the military. She was in the CIA herself. She ran as a moderate. Those of us who live in Virginia know that she's not moderate. It's yet to be seen whether she signs some of these absolutely crazy laws into effect that are about to come across her desk. I know a lot of friends who are about to have some gun boating accidents in Virginia if some of those get passed, but I think she was a smart pick for the Democrats, because I think a lot of people are looking at her and they're looking at Governor Wes Moore as potential presidential candidate bids, and they're also looking at Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is a very polarizing figure. A lot of people do not like Gavin Newsom, even on the left, and so they're trying to test out early on, far enough from the next presidential election cycle, to see how she does and to see how she polls. It's a smart move on their part, because if she's going to crash and burn, she'll crash and burn early, and it's good for the Democrats. And if she doesn't crash and burn, it gives the Republicans fuel for the fodder to figure out what they need to fight her on in the upcoming election.
Really fascinating discussion with everybody here at the table. We'll be back with more in just a moment after a landmark Supreme Court ruling on President Trump's use of emergency powers to impose tariffs. How does that decision shape the State of the Union? And with affordability still top of mind for many Americans, what do voters most need to hear from the president? Our panel after that.
And I must say to you that the State of the Union is not good. Millions of Americans are out of work. Recession and inflation are eroding the money of millions more. Prices are too high and sales are too slow. This year's federal deficit will be about $30 billion. Next year's probably $45 billion. The national debt will rise to over $500 billion.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning.
It's so uplifting.
I feel better about the world.
It was encouraging, gave me hope.
It was absolutely amazingly divine.
I thought I was going to heaven.
You have to come see it.
Multiple times. It's worth every penny.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Shenyun.com.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man, because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear. Call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha 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 ha.
See, Smokey thinks I'm funny.
And tomorrow night's State of the Union speech comes less than a week after the Supreme Court ruled against most of President Trump's tariffs. So how does that ruling, or how might it impact the State of the Union? Here to discuss the political implications of the speech are our panelists, Democratic strategist Mali Smith and Republican strategist Janiyah Thomas.
We're also joined by Democratic strategist Jason Palmer and Taylor Hathorn, visiting fellow with Independent Women. Great to have you all with us throughout tonight. Now, a big focus, of course, was the Supreme Court ruling on Trump's use of tariffs. Big focus on that. Let's actually play a part of that soundbite, and then we'll react to it.
The Supreme Court's ruling on tariffs is deeply disappointing, and I'm ashamed of certain members of the court, absolutely ashamed, for not having the courage to do what's right for our country. Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic, and they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long.
That was a small part of it. Jenna, I want to start with you because many are pointing to Kavanaugh essentially laying out a roadmap of the other options that President Trump has. One is Section 122. We've already seen that being implemented, the 15% global tariffs. How are you reading that, and is it a big setback like some headlines are saying?
Absolutely not. I think the president is doing what's in the best interest of America. He's trying to protect the American citizens, protect American trade. And I think that a lot of people in the liberal media are misreading what the president's actually trying to do.
And Jason, your thoughts on, the IEPA ruling and the other roads that the Trump administration is taking?
I think President Trump, somebody should sit him down and force him to read Neil Gorsuch's opinion, which basically says the way it's supposed to work in America, we have 3 branches of government. And if you want to make changes like this is a major question, you should go to the Congress and try to pass a tariff law so you actually can engage in tariff behavior. Now, Trump doesn't seem to understand that there are 3 branches of government, which is why the legislature has been completely ineffective, almost sidelined for the last year. Less bills passed last year than in a long time. This year it's going to be even less effective. So Trump really should think hard, and somebody should make him read that opinion. Tariffs are unpopular, and tariffs that are just implemented willy-nilly randomly on our allies are a terrible policy.
I think President Trump needs to be a little bit angrier at his attorneys rather than the Supreme Court justices, because really Alan Dershowitz, a professor at Harvard, really did a good job laying this out, where he talked about the attorneys took the wrong avenue. So if they would have looked at it as an Article 1 or Article 1 instead of Article 2 powers, then it would have gone a little bit differently. But if you look at it as a fundraising effort for the United States, it's got to go through Congress. If you look at it as national security, what we have to do for the defense and security of our nation, then he has every right to implement the tariffs that he's implementing. And so I'd be a little bit more frustrated with his attorneys than I would be at the Supreme Court justices who are just following the Constitution.
And Mali?
I'm not a lawyer, but I worked on the campaign, and I can tell you the reason Trump won the campaign is because of inflation. And it is political malpractice to institute a tariff, which is essentially a 15% tax. And it's a regressive tax because lower income and middle income Americans spend more of their money than richer Americans do, and to institute these tariffs that way. President Trump also has claimed that the tariffs would reduce the trade deficit with China and across the world. The trade deficit has increased. It was at the largest it's ever been. He said it would bring back manufacturing. We have lost manufacturing jobs 8 out of the last 9 months. He said it would just reignite the job market overall. It was revised in 2025. President Trump's economy created 15,000 jobs a month. Biden's last year, he created 140,000 jobs a month. So it was basically a 10 times increase than the current amount of jobs that are being created a month.
But how many of those jobs were government jobs?
I do not know, but I can tell you 140,000 is bigger than 15, and GDP of the Trump administration was 1.4%. Every year under the Biden administration, we had higher GDP. So my suggestion to the Trump administration would be, take the win that has been given to you. They've talked about tariff refund checks. They've also talked about DOGE refund checks, which none of us have gotten. But he's talked about tariff refund checks. Use this as an opportunity to give Americans a tariff refund check that might help him in the midterms. But he is so stuck on tariffs, he just can't move from this position.
But I think you can't ignore the fact that we have lost 70,000 factories in the United States since the 90s. That didn't just happen, you know, and in the last year of the Trump administration, you have more investment from outside of the United States coming in 1 year than you did under the entire 4 years of the Biden administration. And so maybe the numbers aren't there yet to prove that the tariffs work, but this is how Trump solved Pakistan and India, that conflict. So I think you can't say blanketly that it doesn't work overall. I just think that the effects haven't happened yet, and I think that we're going to continue to see them occur. Whether that's good or not overall, I too am not an economist, I'm not an attorney, I don't know, but I can see the positive that has happened because of them.
The research has been done, and the tariffs increased prices for Americans by about $1,200 each in this past year, and all the manufacturing jobs that came under the Biden administration have gone away. Many of the factories that have been planned for semiconductors and chips and new technologies around the country are now on hold or don't have the jobs being created anymore. So I just don't understand why Trump doesn't realize there's a reason why 90% of economists are against tariffs, and you should be too.
Jumping off what my Democratic colleague is saying there, not only could tariffs potentially be beneficial if it's one industry and in one area, but the Trump administration's tariffs are tariffing everything, even things we have no plan on building in the United States or growing in the United States. We have tariffs on coffee. There is no world where we're going to start growing our own coffee. The tariffs do not make sense. They can be used for specific areas like the Biden administration did for manufacturing and chips, but this blanket approach is bad economics.
Well, we're hearing a lot here at the table about how these tariffs have been essentially attacks on the American people. The president and his administration argues that the United States is been ripped off by other countries. If you want to weigh in, Janaya, on that, is this a necessary evil and a tool in the toolbox to sort of level the playing field globally?
I think absolutely. I think, again, like I said earlier, the president is doing what's in the best interest of us. It may not happen today or tomorrow. We may not feel the increases of this in our paychecks right now, but I think as time goes on, we will see the benefits of it as American people.
And I think just briefly jumping in on that, there was a commentator on a different show yesterday who made it pretty clear that the way that the trade deficit works, we are sending dollars abroad to buy foreign goods, and those foreign goods are coming into the United States. So we get more stuff every year as a result of this trade deficit. It's not as though Trump seems to think the trade deficit means people are ripping us off, like you just said. It's not true. It means we are sending dollars abroad and we get stuff. We get coffee. We get produce.
We're buying too many lightsabers on Amazon.
We're buying a lot of things from China. We're buying a lot of things. That's what Americans do, and even with the tariffs, that has still gone up. People are still buying more and more and more.
Let me ask you this question, though, Jason. When you hear about reciprocity, take a country like Japan, where our cars are being taxed, yet theirs are not. How do you square that?
No, I actually think that's a great point, Steve, because if Trump was kind of laser focused on different industries where, for example, for many years, the Europeans supported Airbus and it was not fair against Boeing, and there was actually a subsidy situation and a tariff situation that was hurting us there, but Trump doesn't seem to be able to make these very nuanced industry-specific arguments. There's a reason why BYD cars are not here. It's because the Chinese government is significantly subsidizing them, and they're tariffing Elon Musk's Teslas when he goes over there. So they are being smarter about which industries they target and which tariffs they put in place. Trump's blanket tariffs everywhere, even Canada's getting tariffs. It just shows he's kind of the mad king, honestly.
He also has this magical belief tariffs can do everything. In his mind, tariffs can reduce the deficit. They can also be used for refund checks. They also can be used to bring back manufacturing. The problem is you can't do all of those. If you're getting refund checks, then obviously it's not paying down the deficit. Right. If we bring back manufacturing to the U.S. on all these different goods he wants, then obviously it's not going to bring in revenue because we've become self-sufficient. He believes it's this magic tool, and it is not.
Taylor, is it ultimately a national security tool? Whether or not Canada, we can sit here all night and say Canada's our ally, but when they're going and making serious deals with China, a little bit of leverage sometimes might be necessary, perhaps.
Where I will agree with my Democratic colleagues is I do not think that it is an effective long-term strategy, and I have been very vocal about that over the last year. I think in the short term, it is incredibly important because we have the largest economy in the world. We have the most effective economy in the world, and so we need to be able to utilize that to our advantage. This is working now to get people to do what we need them to do. I mean, sheer military might is not going to be the only thing that you bring to the negotiating table. Sometimes you want to do deterrence. Sometimes, you want to work with these nations. Even these allies who are, in fact, our friends are not playing fairly. I wrote my graduate school paper, and I got gaslit by a professor at the time telling me that it wasn't true, but on the pharmaceutical industry in the United States and how Americans were sharing the entire burden for the rest of the world. And our insulin prices and our EpiPen prices and our inhaler prices were out the roof because the rest of the world decided they didn't want to pay those prices and they didn't have to. Some of these strategies can be effective. They're national security strategies. It's just not something that I would recommend that the administration does long term.
And according to our pollster a few minutes ago, now it's the top issue that most people care about.
It's a big win.
So look
President Trump should listen to Taylor.
And now let's turn to the people as NTD Sam Wong took to the streets of D.C. to find out what the folks think about the current state of our union, as well as their expectation for the president's address tomorrow.
What's the state of our union right now?
I think it's pretty good. We got our borders closed. I think the government's role is to protect the citizens of our country, and I think they're doing a good job of it.
It's fractured. Nobody's going to get everything they want. If we can all just put down our prickly pear for a moment and actually listen to each other, we can come to an agreement.
Fantastic. DC has never looked better. I just have walked about 20,000 steps and I was all by myself and I was thrilled.
I think that we're needing to come together as a people to help bring forward the kind of America we'd like to see.
What kind of America would you like to see?
One that comes together for the betterment of all citizens.
As for the speech tomorrow, do you guys have any expectation?
I really wish I could meet all of the hockey players. That's all I've got to say about that.
That would be pretty cool, huh?
It would be amazing.
I am optimistic always, and I would hope that all of our elected officials, whether they agree with Trump or not, would show up at the meeting.
Not planning on watching it. I'll read about it afterwards.
I'm not interested in having his sound bites infiltrate my zen and peace.
I'm hoping he gives an idea about what he's going to do with the tariffs now, kind of the twists and turns. I'd like to see the tariffs stay in place just so we can have leverage on some countries that aren't really playing fair.
I don't know if it's so much what I would like to hear from Trump as much as I would like to see the people from across the aisle be less petty about things and just recognize the good that the guy's actually and his administration is actually doing for our country. I think common sense goes a long way, and I think that's just what he has is common sense.
And coming up, NTD's Mari Otsu has more for us from the White House. We dive deeper into what we can expect from President Trump's speech based on his public comments in recent weeks. And then we have a live look at the White House, and we'll be right back with a lot more. Stay with us.
What has lasted 5,000 years was once almost lost. Now, the world awaits the divine culture's return. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Get your tickets now at shenyun.com.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3, Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month. And we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
And President Trump preparing to deliver the first State of the Union address of his second term. Tomorrow night, he'll be speaking to the nation in front of a joint session of Congress, highlighting his administration's accomplishments and setting his future agenda. Right now, we're going to go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, who's standing by for us live at the White House. Mari, good evening.
Hey, Steve. Yeah, so President Trump's address tomorrow night is coming amid a lot of movement, as you guys have been talking about around the table there. For one thing, of course, last Friday, as you mentioned, that Supreme Court 6-3 ruling against the legality of most of President Trump's emergency tariffs, which we know were a large part of his national security strategy. Of course, in the meantime, President Trump has doubled down, saying that nothing in essence has changed, and he's going to just use other legal means and mechanisms to pursue the same thing. But, Steve, it also comes amid the U.S.'s largest military buildup in the Gulf. Literally the world's largest warship, the USS Ford, is set to arrive and dock in Israel tonight. And that's as President Trump continues to invoke Operation Midnight Hammer, saying that, he's threatening military action against Iran if they don't come to the table and make a nuclear deal. And, Steve, it's coming as President Trump is beginning to hit the campaign trail ahead of the midterm elections. One of those races that he's really invested in, key battleground state, is going to have their primaries just next week. So let's take a look at President Trump previewing this today. Watch.
So we have a country that's now doing well. We have the greatest economy we've ever had. We have the most activity we've ever had. I'm making a speech tomorrow night, and you'll be hearing me say that. I mean, it's going to be a long speech because we have so much to talk about.
President Trump addressing a joint session of Congress is expected to highlight the accomplishments of the first year of his second term, from securing the border to lowering inflation.
Core inflation is now the lowest of any time in more than 7 years. The last 3 months, we've had the lowest inflation we have had in over a decade. I'm going to make a State of the Union address on Tuesday. I hope you're going to watch. And we're going to be talking about it.
His address comes as he vows passage of the SAVE Act, which would require voter ID and proof of citizenship to vote before the midterm elections. President Trump has long called the 2020 election rigged, recently pointing to potential foreign interference from the Chinese Communist Party and saying that prosecutions are coming soon. At a rally in Rome, Georgia last week, he's driving home election integrity and his tariff strategy as necessary for national security.
I have a new one to add, voter ID. The Democrats don't want to give us voter ID because they want to cheat.
If that election wasn't rigged, every single one of the people in this room right now would not be here. You'd be home with your son, daughter, family.
After the Supreme Court ruled against the legality of his emergency tariffs last Friday, President Trump has vowed to impose a 15% global tariff using other legal means. He's also threatening a much higher tariff on any country that he says, quote, wants to play games in the wake of the SCOTUS decision.
We were being ripped off by almost every single country in the world, had some massive surpluses. China had hundreds of billions of dollars in surpluses with the United States. They rebuilt China. They rebuilt the army.
And you know who brought the cases against us? People that are China-oriented, people that have business in China that want to rip us off and keep ripping us off.
President Trump is also expected to highlight the 8 global conflicts he's helped settle. That's as he threatens military action in Iran if the Iranian regime does not agree to a nuclear deal.
You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. And they can't have a nuclear weapon, and they've been told that very strongly. They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region.
And Steve, President Trump called the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team yesterday to congratulate them on their win against Canada. That's the first time U.S. has won gold since that 1980 Miracle on Ice defeat of the Soviets, and he invited them to his speech. They will be attending, reportedly. Meanwhile, the women's hockey team declined his invitation due to a scheduling commitment. Other notable guests are the mother and fiance of Mark Brock, a Louisiana police officer killed in line of duty, and they were invited by House Speaker Mike Johnson. And finally, Claire Lai, the daughter of Jimmy Lai, a Hong Kong democracy and free speech activist, will be attending. She was invited by Representative Chris Smith. Back to you.
Certainly a lot in the backdrop of that very important speech that we'll be watching out for throughout the evening. NTD's Mari Otsu live at the White House. Thank you, Mari.
And how are American voters gauging President Trump's State of the Union address? And are they persuadable right now? Joining us again to discuss the weight of tomorrow night's speech and for the voters are our panelists, Democratic strategist Mali Smith, Republican strategist Janiyah Thomas, former Democratic presidential candidate Jason Palmer, and visiting fellow with Independent Women Taylor Hawthorne. As we look to the midterms right now, it does look like the Democrats are accelerating in various state primaries for now. At least we've heard that President Trump says he's going to hit the campaign trail when midterms come up. Mali, how are you watching that field? Who are the persuadable voters right now? Who do each side need to talk to?
Yeah, so it's much narrower now than it used to be. A lot of voters are set. They're traditional Democrats or they're traditional Republicans. There is a group of voters, though. These are voters who went from Trump to Biden back to Trump. They're voters who have a bit more idiosyncratic political views. They're not down-the-line partisans. They also are not as consistent news watchers. And their number one issue is the economy. I think, unfortunately, for Republicans right now, they are losing them. The good thing for Republicans is the election isn't happening right now. You have couple months to see if you can right the ship. Unfortunately for them, though, presidents don't tend to get more popular as their terms go on. The trend lines, this isn't just a Trump thing. This is just when presidents are in power, you're making decisions that is a cumulative weight that brings your approval rating down. So I think if you're Republicans, you hope that you can use these 6 to 7 months to really start to highlight your wins and hope the economy improves. If you're Democrats, you try to build on the 6 to 8 point lead we see in the generic ballot and hope that Election Day comes as soon as possible.
And Janiyah, how are Republicans going to tap into that? Because we have seen President Trump is kind of an outlier. He's surprised many, surprised the polls in the past. So how can we see maybe that element play into the midterms, and how can Republicans harness that?
I think that, we have to capitalize on the momentum and the things we built during the presidential campaign. I think the work we did, especially with minority communities, is very important. I think we need to continue that. But I think to highlight that, we need to not focus as much on like the urban communities and focus more on the suburban communities, because there's just as many minorities now that are moving into the suburbs. And I think for Republicans, it would be smart if they focus more on the suburban areas versus urban areas. And additionally, I think working with younger voters is very important. I think those voters are more persuadable. They're not traditional voters, like especially the Gen Z community. I think it's very important that we continue to work towards, messaging to that community.
So I want to get your thoughts, Jason. One of the big issues that the president has been talking about is the Save America Act, which is ultimately voter integrity, measures. The biggest one is voter ID. We've seen polling. CNN has had some interesting polling where the vast majority of Americans across all demographics are in favor of it. Why are the Democrats lagging so far behind on it?
Well, the main reason is that Democrats see a voter ID law as sort of like a poll tax or something that would be used to keep minorities out from voting. This dates back to the 60s and 70s, and I don't want to get into the whole education lesson, but there was and has been a history of excluding people from the polls, and many people can't afford to get IDs. These are people that maybe travel by bus to get to their job, don't own a car. 40% of Americans live at less than $50,000 a year, and sometimes even less than $25,000 a year. And so those laws seem to most Democrats like they're exclusionary. Now, all that said, I'm one of the few Democrats that actually thinks that you should have an ID in order to vote. But I think it should be passed as part of a comprehensive reform that makes it so that mail-in voting is easier. In fact, a lot of Republicans like mail-in voting, not just Democrats, and we need to make that fraud-proof as well. So I honestly think it's a little bit of a political year ploy, the way that this particular act has been designed. Voting is done at the state level, and these elections are governed at the state level, so it really won't have that much impact. But it will create a lot of heat because most Americans do think you should have to show an ID to vote.
Janaya, you were the media director for the black community for the Trump administration, or the Trump campaign. The Democrats are painting this as they call it, Jim Crow 2.0, or whatever the phrase is. What is your take on this, and do you think it's a voter suppression tactic for the urban community?
Not at all. I think that it's insulting to think that just because you're black or brown that you can't get an ID to vote. I think black people agree with this. I think Hispanic people agree with this. And I think the Democrats are using this as the typical race baiting they like to do to make people think that, because you're a part of a certain demographic that, you're not capable of doing X, Y, and Z.
Well, we're going to have to leave the discussion here for a moment. There's still more to discuss this evening. We're just getting started here. We have plenty of more. We're going to take a live shot right now of the Capitol, where we're taking a look where the president will give his State of the Union address tomorrow.
And President Trump's America First doctrine has ruffled some feathers, both at home and abroad. What do Americans think about Trump's foreign policy? Stay tuned for more discussions with our panel coming up.
I believe in change because I believe in you, the American people. And that's why I stand here as confident as I have ever been that the state of our union is strong. Thank you.
Tired of struggling with that heavy leaf blower? Introducing the Bullseye Power Blower. It delivers a massive blowing force, and yet it's so compact and lightweight. Just lock and load the rechargeable battery for long-lasting runtime. The secret is the compact turbocharged motor with jet burst technology that blasts out 21,000 RPMs of airflow. Watch this. The sheer force propels this woman across the pool. Look, use Bullseye to blow up a huge jump house. Now that's power. Even blows snow right off your vehicle in no time. Turbo clean your porch in a flash, or tidy up your dirty garage floor in seconds. Get it today for just $99.99. But wait, act now and get a $20 discount. So it's only $79.99. Plus, you'll get the adjustable extension tube, yours free. And it all comes with free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-209-2313 or go to bullseyeblower.com. That's 1-800-209-2313 or order online at bullseyeblower.com. Order now.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器，它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天音的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
And welcome back as we continue our discussion this evening in studio in our Washington, D.C. studios. As President Trump, in Trump's America, his America First doctrine is sure to be a key feature of his State of the Union address. With that said, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, speaking at the Munich Security Conference, laying out the president's vision for America's foreign policy. Here's that clip.
Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength.
So, Taylor, I'll get your thoughts on this first. Do you think foreign policy meaningfully moves domestic voters, or is it only, really when there's a crisis or a war that we see people take into the polls?
Historically, I would say that your former answer is correct, which is why I think the administration has a really big edict to make sure that the American voter understands why this foreign policy initiative and push over the last year has been so important. We were on the brink of a complete world order change. And I'm not a conspiracy theory nut, right? Like, I am someone who, I analyze data from foreign policies, from global wars, from global conflicts all the time. I'm an Iranian fellow at the Hamilton Society. I study this stuff day in and day out. And Iran not having a nuclear weapon and the ability to enrich uranium, it's incredibly important to the safety and security and sovereignty, not just of the American people, but of the West as a whole, of the freedom of speech, of freedom of religion, of our democratic values that we really value and that our allies value. And so this is really, really important for the administration to do strong messaging on this. Furthermore, it's really important to do strong messaging around what the world order has looked like because of places like the United Nations who are really failing. They're failing all over the world. They're failing the United States of America. NATO really wasn't doing a great job up until this last couple of years and until they've agreed to increase their GDP spend up to 5% eventually. They're going to get there, but they're starting to participate in their own security and in the security of America. So I think there's a lot of great things on the horizon. I don't want the administration to talk doom and gloom and to scare people. I just want them to be realistic in communicating the message of why this foreign policy stuff matters, why Marco Rubio's speech was so incredibly important, and what it could have looked like if we weren't doing the things that we're doing now.
And Mali, we have seen a significant shift. President Trump establishing the Board of Peace, most notably and most recently. Is that something that the Democrats are viewing favorably as it could potentially finally bring peace to the Gaza Strip?
I don't think they're viewing the Board of Peace favorably. I think they view it mostly as a joke to have Vladimir Putin on the board of peace in Saudi Arabia is like having Jeffrey Dahmer on a board dedicated to vegetarianism.
I mean, Saudi Arabia is a key ally to have there to keep the peace.
Killed a journalist. They're having those folks and excluding our allies is not something that I think is going to be looked favorably upon when it comes to Americans. I would say, a lot of Americans are happy that the Trump administration was able to push through the Gaza ceasefire. I'm glad he did that. I think it was very strategically smart that once Hamas agreed in principle, that he just took that and went with it and was able to get a deal hammered out there. But I think the question is, what do we do going forward there? It's great that we got the ceasefire. You have Jared Kushner talking about building these huge hotels in the Gaza Strip and essentially turning it into Miami. Well, there's a big gulf between ceasefire and turning it into Miami. The gulf being is there's a current famine in Gaza, and we are nowhere close to figuring out if it's a two-state solution or what we're going to do there. So again, I think Americans will reward Trump when it comes to the Gaza ceasefire, but they're going to need to see more progress on it, not just lofty goals.
And Janai, the 2024 State of the Union speech for President Biden, big focus was Russia-Ukraine war, but Gaza as well, huge issue there. How do you see maybe the focus this time? Because it does look like after the Venezuela operation, Americans were viewing America very favorably. They were like, ooh, this foreign policy win is a win here at home as well. So how do you see that playing out? Because we do still have the Russia-Ukraine war still ongoing.
I mean, I think that the part of this has a lot to do with messaging. I think the reason Venezuela had such a favorable outcome amongst American people was because the way the administration messaged on American dominance and our strength, and it was transferable to everyday voters in a way they could understand. I think that when you talk about protecting American sovereignty, like the average person doesn't even really know what that means. And I think that when you talk about the things that are going on in Iran and the things going on in Ukraine, most of us are never going to go there. And I think that, we need to do a better job as Republicans messaging on how these issues protect Americans and dumb the messaging down a little bit.
And Jason, there's of course a big economic angle with foreign policy as well, especially with China. We saw, especially with tariffs, President Trump loved to use tariffs against China, very high tariffs there. He does have a lot of non-tariff tools as well, though. How do you anticipate President Trump treating the China topic tomorrow?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how he talks about foreign policy generally. Agreeing with all of the panelists here, the American people care the most about Americans. I mean, that's partly why Donald Trump won, is he was America first. And so every time he's talking about what's going on in Iran or Gaza or China or Ukraine, the American people feel like that's a distraction. We elected you to be America first. Why are you moving half of our air forces over to threaten Iran? I don't understand it. They don't want that to be what's going on. When he says, I'm going to take over Greenland, they say, wait a minute, why do we even care about Greenland? And maybe they might read about the defense reason for having some additional bases in Greenland, but Americans want Donald Trump to stop being distracted. They want him to focus on affordability at home. He can't even seem to talk about affordability for more than a minute or two in his speeches without getting off track. And if the discussion tomorrow during the State of the Union ends up being a lot about foreign policy, that's going to be bad. The American people, and especially Republicans, don't want him focused on foreign policy.
And Taylor, on that note, it does seem some are realizing, specifically with Greenland, for example, the national security implications that does have for the U.S. You've heard a lot more focus on Russia and China's activities there and how close that is actually to our homeland. How do you see, though, to Jason's point, the president doing that balance of getting the American people to understand why that matters and why there has been such a big focus on foreign policy?
I agree with my co-panelist. He's got Marco Rubio in that seat. Marco Rubio is the most effective Secretary of State in our nation's history, I believe, and I've got a lot of favorites, but he is really, really effective and really good. Steve Witkoff is really good at his job. Let them handle the talkers on this. Let them talk about their successes and their wins and why this matters and why this is important. I really think that leading up to the midterms, the president really needs to focus on this affordability issue. I think he can talk about immigration and border security, but the American people also care about the immigration and border security too. But this is what things are happening here at home. This is what they care about. It's in their backyard. And so my advice to the president and to the administration would be, if it is touching your feet here at home, Focus on that in the speech. You know, you can talk about the minute wins and how we're keeping America safe, but please don't use the word Monroe Doctrine, even though I think it's funny and hilarious. You know, you've got to be able to focus on the things that the normal average American viewer cares about, and not us like dorks sitting around the table who read about this stuff all the time, you know?
And, yeah, please.
Well, I was going to say one thing I'd add too. I agree politically he needs to focus on affordability, but if he does bring up foreign policy, and specifically if he talks about Iran, I would love to hear from him what the rationale is for an upcoming strike. Because first off, if it's to destroy the nuclear program, they told us under good authority that they had done that on the first strike. So either they were wrong or they lied. If it's to overthrow the government, I would like them to give me some sort of rationale of how that looks, if there's going to be regional stability, if there's going to be able to have a government in waiting so there's not chaos. Right now, we've had this steady drumbeat to having military action in Iran, and the reasons they've mentioned are kind of all over the place. It's to protect the protesters, it's to destroy the nuclear program, potentially it's for regime change. They need to tell us what the strike is and what they're trying to accomplish.
And I think they do that by talking about how the IRGC has proxies all around the world. In Latin America, I mean, I don't think people really understand how prevalent the IRGC is in many thousands and thousands of American deaths around the world, not just in Hezbollah and Hamas, but in Latin America too. And so if you can focus to that being the destruction of a regime that has killed American citizens, I think you've got a winning talking point. You know, I think many Americans don't understand, like in the Toby Keith song, that there's a difference between Iraq and Iran. And, you know, and so you got to be able to focus on that and kind of and show them why this really matters. I mean, the IRGC is an incredibly destabilizing force in the region. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, different GCC nations in the region, they want the IRGC out of that seat, and they are the next generation of allies for us. I don't agree with everything that's going on in Saudi Arabia. I certainly don't think that they should sit on a UN Council for women's rights by any means, but they are an ally of ours in progressing the Middle East and developing those relationships with the West.
Just a quick follow-up for you, Taylor, before we have to move on. There was some very interesting sound that came out over the weekend with Special Envoy Witkoff in one of the Sunday shows, I believe, where I don't know if it was a Freudian slip or just a slip, but he basically said the president was asking him, how has Iran not capitulated yet with the incredible military buildup that we see there? Why do you think they're not? Yeah, I actually am incredibly not surprised at all that Iran hasn't capitulated. If you look at anything about Iran and its history and pre-1979 revolution, this is not a shock for any of us who study Middle Eastern politics. I mean, these are the people, the Ayatollah, the IRGC, they are delusional. They will die. They do not care about death. They don't even care about the death of their own people. And so they are willing to do whatever it takes to die. And so I've said for weeks now, there is no negotiating with Iran, not the current regime. And so I think military action is probably imminent. But I do want to say before we move on, there is a difference between military action and war. And I think the administration really needs to communicate that President Trump and this administration are strategic interventionists, right? Like they're not an administration who wants to go into this forever war. My brothers are both Marines and I grew up in the Middle East. I don't want to see this happen. And so he's got to be able to differentiate that and show the American people that this is not the same thing as the global war on terror, even though we are trying to eradicate terrorism throughout the world. Indeed, a very complicated topic that we're going to continue to break down in our next interview. This has the U.S. standoff with Iran weighing heavily on President Trump and will likely be a critical part of his State of the Union address tomorrow evening. Joining us now to discuss the behind-the-scenes advice is retired U.S. Navy SEAL Mike Sorrell. Mike, you're also the founder of LegacyExpeditions.net. Mike, Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kane has been reportedly advising the president and his top officials of the significant risks should the U.S. become entangled in a prolonged military conflict. What are the potential top-level internal messages and decisions the president could be weighing on now in how to handle this standoff with the Iranian regime?
Yeah, I think Taylor was on point in your previous conversation is, we've got to message this clearly that there isn't going to be increased instability for the long term within the Middle East. Now, there may be some short-term instability if the president chooses to strike, and I am in favor of that. Ultimately, I think the biggest concern is the proxy forces, Hezbollah and Hamas, and the capability to strike Israel if we were to authorize strikes on Iran and the IRGC. But, let me counter with this. For the first time in our lifetimes, we have the ability to remove the cancer from the Middle East, the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is actually the best probable outcome for long-term peace in the Middle East. And that's the messaging behind it. Every president has kicked the can down the road and left this problem of Iran for the next presidency coming behind them. And that's the problem. It's the moral clarity that President Trump brings to the table, that he understands that this must be done. And when you engage in diplomacy with Iran, I think the saying is, they'll give you a smile through diplomacy while lying through their teeth. Right now, they are buying time, and arguably we are as well, because it's going to roughly about 5 days before the Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group is on station. And that is the last piece of the puzzle that President Trump and the Secretary of War need to make to authorize a complete strike.
So, Mike, what do you see as the biggest risks, and what do you say to maybe some of the folks out there that say, this is an opportunity to have long-lasting change when they may go and think about what happened in Afghanistan or Iraq?
Yeah, there's a lot of comparing apples and oranges. People said, hey, we don't want a regime change in Venezuela. Look how that is going. Arguably, the regime change in Iraq didn't go so well. They were unstable. They were not capable of their own self-defense. But Iran and the Persian people are different. Over 90% of the population of Iran does not support the Islamic Republic. They want freedom. They want free and democratic elections. They are capitalists. We remember Iran in the early 70s. It was a flourishing economy. Yes, there was dissent amongst let's say zealot or overly religious fanatics, but the rewards in this far outweigh the risks. And again, this is not Iraq. This is Iran. We have the Shah's son, who's been involved in the politics, who's ready to step in as an interim leader to reach those free and democratic elections.
And, we're hearing, Mike, right now about, an unprecedented buildup in terms of air power that we haven't seen since 2003. But to Taylor's point, talk to us about strategic action versus war and the fact that we don't have boots on the ground in the region, how this all might play out.
Within the calculus that they're measuring this campaign, you've got to assume that they only plan on airstrikes. They don't want to commit ground troops. They know the Persian people, the Iranian people, are capable of taking the government and then establishing an interim government for stability. So if we see strikes, it's not going to be ground troops. And if it were, it would be very limited raids to see key terrain, and that's most likely oil platforms that are adjacent to the Gulf. So you're going to look at airstrikes most likely on IRGC, military targets, hardened infrastructure that supports the military, and then Iranian leaders themselves. But arguably, intel shows that a lot of Iranian leaders are fleeing, knowing what's coming.
And Mike, we saw last time when the U.S. took out with the stealth bombers the nuclear sites, the way that the Iranian regime responded, attacking Israel. It was a rather, phenomenal scene, really, the bombs coming over Israel that, thankfully didn't cause that much damage. You see the Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel calling for strikes and has reportedly been growing more concerned since he met with Trump earlier this month. How much does Israel play into the president's calculations? And if there is another strike that we might see, do you think that the damage could be worse, and how concerned should Israel be for an Iranian response?
And that's the dichotomy we're seeing. We're seeing conciliatory language coming from Peshkian, but the hardliners, the security establishment, is actually voicing something different. I believe it was the Iranian foreign minister that reminded people that they have a lot of missiles, and some of them struck Israel. So is Israel going to be involved in any aerial strikes on Iran? Most likely. But again, the Iron Dome and David Sling combated most of the rockets that were launched at Israel. So, I don't foresee, Israel in great harm. It does add to the equation of Hezbollah and their armament. But Netanyahu sees what Iran is doing and what they have done for decades. They're engaging in optimism and conciliatory language while we know they're delaying. They're not negotiating in good faith. They're taking every bit of time they can to harden their defenses, to enrich more uranium, and even strengthen the proxy groups and plan and prepare with proxy groups to attack if they are struck.
Retired Navy SEAL Mike Sorelli, greatly appreciate your insights.
Thanks, all.
And newly elected Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger will deliver the Democratic response to President Trump's State of the Union address. What should we expect? We'll dive deeper with our panel in just a moment. Stay with us.
I am thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. Our borders are secure. Our families are flourishing. Our values are renewed. Our pride is restored. And for all of these reasons, I say to the people of our great country and to the members of Congress, the state of our union is stronger than ever before.
This is such a gentle painting, so beautifully portrayed.
A group of people reading together in this simple, everyday-looking living room. A young girl reading along with an adult, a grandparent sitting in the lotus position, a businessman in his typical suit.
You see all those people, they look like they have quietly settled down there. And you as a viewer, it looks like you've just stepped in the door.
You can't see what it is they're reading, so you're a little bit curious and you're kind of invited to walk in.
This harmonious feeling is not by accident. It is the very subject of the work. The book they are reading is the main text of Falun Gong, which is an ancient Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. At the core of Falun Gong are the values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Unfortunately, the practice is banned in China, where the artist resides. Thousands have been killed for their faith. Golden energy blooms into the room as a result of their steadfast faith. The painting on the back wall reminds us of this work's title, Plum Blossoms in a Muddy World.
It's also a metaphor for the practitioners that are sitting in the room as plum blossoms.
They signify perseverance and hope that all brutal winters end and life is renewed once again.
It's a magical painting.
And there you have a live shot at the Capitol, where tomorrow night President Trump will be giving his first State of the Union address of his second term, but his second time addressing the joint Congress. So a lot to watch for tomorrow night. Newly elected Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger will deliver the Democratic response to President Trump's State of the Union address tomorrow night.
And joining us again in studio to discuss expectations from the rebuttal are our panelists, Democratic strategist Mali Smith, Republican strategist Janiyah Thomas, former Democratic presidential candidate Jason Palmer, and visiting fellow with the Independent Women, Taylor Hathorn. All right, so I think we have a soundbite here. The Democratic Senator Andy Kim was asked by CNN whether he would skip the president's address. Here's what he said.
I want us to show the seriousness of what we're trying to do, and not just what we're opposed to with Trump, but that we're going to have our own agenda. We're going to be positive in terms of what we're showing the American people, especially on the issues of affordability, which is top of mind. So whatever we do, I don't think everyone has to be at the Capitol. All the focus is on winning in November, taking back control, and having a very different State of the Union next year.
So, Mali, once again, it seems like something's brewing.
Yeah. Again, as long as it's not those dumb paddles that they had last year, I will be happy. But look, I think people need to remember, no antics in the State of the Union is going to win you the midterms, most likely. If you try something very out of the box, especially if it's in the State of the Union, it's going to backfire on you. With Marjorie Taylor Greene, to Joe Wilson, to Al Green, it has always been a failure to do something like that politically. So my suggestion to the Democrats are, go to the speech. I'm sure some of the things he's going to say are going to annoy you, and then leave the speech and find some cameras on CNN, NTD, tell them what you think Trump did wrong and what you can do better, but don't try to get cute with it, because none of these things ever work.
Are the Democrats capable of anything else stupid other than the paddle thing? Or
I mean, to go back to the clip here, I mean, he's talking about they have an agenda that they're ready to present, but nobody knows what that is. Nobody knows what the message is that's coming from them. And I think that, the best thing they can do is just show some type of decorum and then do what he said and, try to bracket it after the speech is over.
And Jason, with tomorrow, whether, the Democrats inside the Capitol or outside with the counter programming, there's also, of course, the focus on Spanberger, new governor, and, what she's going to say there. What does that tell you about the direction of the Democratic Party, that they have chosen her to kind of do the rebuttal?
Well, they've chosen her because she won in a landslide in Virginia, and Virginia is a purple state, and she won pretty strongly. She's going to talk about affordability. She's going to talk about improving the economy. She's going to put America first. She may not say those exact words, but that's what she's going to do. And I think her 10 minutes are going to be very solid because of the way she ran her campaign and how she won. Now, on this other thing that's brewing that we don't know exactly what it is, I agree with what Mali's saying, that there's a lot of chance that this could not work out. But it's tough being a Democrat leader right now, because a lot of Democrats believe we're creeping into authoritarianism. And if we just go there and we clap politely, that's not what we need to be doing. So I don't know what is exactly going to happen, but I do expect there will be some undecorum, if I could coin that word, because what's going on immigration-wise in our country is driving Hispanic voters towards Democrats more than ever before, and people are very upset with the way the immigration policy is being carried out. It's un-American. This, attacking other countries or threatening to attack other countries that are allies, that's unacceptable. We have been the leader of the world order for the last 70 years, and that has accrued so much benefit to us in terms of being the currency for the world, in terms of being the leader of so many things worldwide that Trump is destroying left and right. And I think Democrats do have to stand up for that somehow, whether it's in the chamber or these 10 to 20 Democrats who may not show up. It's important right now that Democrats show what they care about.
And Taylor, your thoughts on that, but especially when it comes to America First, many of our partners around the world, allies, thought that meant maybe America isolationism, or kind of pulling away from that. It seemed with Marco Rubio's speech there in Munich, a lot of people felt reassured, a lot of our allies there. How do you see maybe that element playing out in whoever does show up to the speech?
I mean, America is still in the driver's seat for the entire world order. I don't care who you are or what side of the aisle you're on. We are set as an example and leaders throughout the world, and so we need to be in that seat. some of these institutions and processes and the way things have been done over the last century that President Trump is breaking, some of them need to break, but not all of them need to break. And so I think over the next couple of years, Republicans need to understand that even those of us who are fans of some of the things that he's doing, a majority of the things that he is doing, there is a world post-Trump. And so we need to look at, is his personality and what he brings to the table going to be enough to have America stay in that driver's seat when you've got adversaries like China who are just death of 1,000 cuts behind our back all of the time with the way that they strategize with weaponized migration, with the way they strategize in funding terror and funding narco-terrorists through precursor chemicals on the southern border. Like, these are the things that we need to be focusing on and think about how America is going to lead, not just over how we've done it the last 100 years, but how we're going to do it for the next 100. And so I want Republicans to start thinking a little bit past President Trump. Keep the good stuff that he's done, but what does the next 50 years look like for us? And I think that that's really important.
I think right now we could queue up a graphic here and take a look at some potential Democrats that have already said that they will not be attending. There's a pretty long list. I didn't realize it was that big, with Patty Murray, Jeff Merkley, these are all senators here. I don't know if there's any members of Congress. Yeah, it looks like there are some members of Congress, some congresswomen. This list is growing. This list is growing. Mali, what might come of this? Do you think that this is a safe bet where, you know, you're looking at more than a handful of Democrat lawmakers not attending the State of the Union?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that list grows as we get closer to the speech. But as you know, my fellow Democratic colleague said, this is something Democrats are going to have to navigate, because Democrats in polling, it's kind of like our Tea Party moment, they are incredibly angry. They're mad at Republicans, but they're also mad at Democrats for not fighting back. The issue that Democratic elected officials have is being in there for the speech. Any way you potentially could fight back or show you're unhappy with the speech probably doesn't win you the voters you need to win over in a midterm election. So I think that this might be the best solution for Democrats if it prevents any sort of disruption in the chamber. It's the best solution out of a bunch of bad solutions. But again, I would counsel Democrats, go after the speech and tell the American people why Trump is wrong. No antic you do in the speech is going to help you win the midterm.
Janai, do you think that this has the potential to backfire on the Democrats? It's usually, you know, a pretty powerful statement when you see the president drawing applause and everybody does just sort of sit there quietly without any response. If they don't have the numbers in that, does it lose the effect?
I don't think that the average voter in American, the American people actually care about what they do. I think it's more so they don't need to be fixated on why Trump's wrong. They need to be fixated on what they can do better going forward. I think they spend so much time talking about, all the things they hate about him, but they don't talk about what's better about them. And I think that, what Democrats aren't capable of doing, the president is doing by leading with force, leading with dominance, and it's showing how important we are as a country leading in the world.
Right now, we do have some breaking news. This says President Trump will be visiting Texas this Friday. This will come just ahead of the state's primary election next Tuesday, March 3rd. The president has endorsed multiple Republicans, but has yet to do so in the biggest race. Senator John Cornyn of Texas running for re-election there. Trump is expected to be in the Corpus Christi area, but details of his schedule are not released as of yet. That is all we have for you this evening. Thank you all so much for joining us on the special preview of President Trump's State of the Union address.
And tune in with us tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern as we track the president ahead of his speech, hear reactions from lawmakers, and speak with panels on what it all means for you. Don't miss it.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Steve Lance.
And I'm Tiffany Meier, and have a good night.
My fellow citizens, this nation is poised for greatness. The time has come to proceed toward a great new challenge. a second American revolution of hope and opportunity. A revolution carrying us to new heights of progress by pushing back frontiers of knowledge and space. A revolution of spirit that taps the soul of America, enabling us to summon greater strength than we've ever known. And a revolution that carries beyond our shores the golden promise of human freedom in a world at peace.
I have traveled all over the world to 50 countries now, and I have never seen a production any better than this anywhere.
Breathtaking. It is absolutely stunning. It's so uplifting.
I feel better about the world.
It was encouraging, gave me hope.
It was absolutely amazingly divine.
I thought that I was going to heaven.
You have to come see it.
Multiple times. It's worth every penny.
Make sure you see it. Make sure you see it.
Returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Shenyun.com.